The massive Xyrillian battlecruiser hummed with an eerie silence. Jae-sung Park stood motionless in the interrogation chamber, his hands cuffed, but his posture relaxed. Bright blue energy fields flickered around the room, casting strange shadows. On the metallic walls, Queen Hana watched him carefully. Her species looked nothing like humans, a complex organism of translucent membranes and shifting biomechanical parts that could reconfigure themselves at will. Her primary sensory cluster, something between an eye and a scanning device, studied Jae-sung with intense curiosity. "Another human captured during the border conflict," she clicked, her language translator converting her complex bioelectrical communications into standard galactic speech. "You seem different from the others." Jae-sung said nothing. He noticed every detail around him, the slight vibration of the floor, the micro-temperature changes, the way the energy restraints pulsed with a rhythmic frequency. His training as a strategic diplomatic engineer had prepared him for moments exactly like this. The Xyrillian queen moved closer. Her body shifted, tentacle-like appendages moving with precision. Most humans become emotional. They beg, they cry, they show weakness. But you... She paused, her sensory cluster spinning slightly. "You show nothing." A faint smile crossed Jae-sung's face, not a smile of arrogance but of calm understanding. The chamber had multiple surveillance systems. Xyrillian technology was advanced. They could read micro-expressions, detect hormone changes, analyze neural patterns. But Jae-sung was special. His psychological conditioning allowed him to maintain absolute control. Queen Hana's translator continued. "Your species fights us, yet you sit here calm. Explain." Jae-sung knew this was a test. The Xyrillians weren't just looking for information. They were studying human psychology, trying to understand their enemy's mental framework. "Conflict is temporary," he finally spoke. His voice was steady, almost neutral. "Relationships are permanent." The Queen's sensory cluster spun faster, a sign of extreme interest. No human had ever responded like this before. Most prisoners would be terrified, angry, or desperately trying to negotiate their survival. The room's temperature dropped slightly. External sensors were scanning him, probing for any sign of deception. But Jae-sung's training was impeccable. His heartbeat remained constant, his neural patterns stable. Xyrillian technology was impressive. They could read thoughts, analyze potential future actions, and predict behavioral patterns with remarkable accuracy. But humans, especially those like Jae-sung, had developed psychological techniques that could confuse even their most advanced scanning systems. "You are not a typical soldier," Queen Hana observed. Her translator rendered her complex communication into precise, almost poetic language. "You think differently." Jae-sung said nothing. Silence, he knew, could be more powerful than words. The interrogation continued. Hours passed. The Xyrillian queen tried multiple approaches: psychological manipulation, subtle threats, complex reasoning. But Jae-sung remained an enigma. His background was unique. Not just a diplomatic strategist, but someone specifically trained for high-stress cross-species interactions. Every movement, every breath was calculated. He represented a new generation of human diplomats, individuals who saw conflict not as a problem to be solved through violence, but as an opportunity for understanding. Queen Hana began to realize something unusual was happening. Instead of her interrogating him, the dynamic was subtly shifting. Jae-sung was observing her, learning, analyzing. The chamber's energy fields continued to pulse. Outside, the vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly. Distant star systems twinkled, indifferent to the complex psychological dance happening inside the battlecruiser. As the interrogation reached its critical point, both Jae-sung and Queen Hana understood that this encounter was about something much larger than a simple prisoner interview. This was a first contact, not of weapons but of minds. The interrogation room transformed. Its cold, sterile environment suddenly felt charged with an unexpected tension. Queen Hana, her biomechanical body shifting colors, spoke words that would change everything. "By ancient Xyrillian royal code, I offer you one wish. Speak, human." Jae-sung understood the depth of this moment. Among Xyrillians, a royal wish was a sacred promise. Once spoken, it could never be broken. No manipulation, no escape clause. The Queen would be forced to fulfill whatever request he made. Most prisoners would ask for freedom. Some might request weapons or escape routes. A few might plead for their lives. But Jae-sung saw something different, an opportunity. His mind calculated rapidly. Years of diplomatic training condensed into seconds of pure strategic thinking. This wasn't just about him. This was about humanity's future. I wish, he said slowly, for a complete cultural and technological exchange program between humans and Xyrillians. Queen Hana's sensory clusters froze. Her entire body seemed to pause, processing his words. No prisoner had ever made such a request. It defied every expected behavioral pattern. The room's energy fields flickered. Surveillance systems recorded every millisecond of this unprecedented interaction. Jae-sung's heartbeat remained steady. His breathing controlled. "Explain," the Queen demanded. Jae-sung knew this was his moment. Conflict wastes resources. Understanding creates progress. An exchange means we both learn, we both grow. Xyrillian biology allowed them to process complex information instantly. Queen Hana analyzed his statement from multiple perspectives. Humans were known for their unpredictability, but this was beyond standard prediction models. Her translator hummed. "You could have requested anything. Your freedom, weapons, information. Yet you choose communication?" "Communication is the most powerful weapon," Jae-sung responded. The battlecruiser's core systems seemed to pulse with a strange energy. Something fundamental was changing, not through violence, but through a single calculated wish. Queen Hana's tentacle-like appendages moved in complex patterns, a sign of deep internal conflict. Her royal code demanded she honor the wish, but every instinct told her this human was dangerous. "The exchange will be monitored," she stated. Her voice carried a mix of grudging respect and underlying threat. Jae-sung nodded. A simple gesture. That spoke volumes. Outside the interrogation chamber, Xyrillian officers watched in confusion. Their most advanced psychological prediction systems were breaking down. This human didn't fit any known model of prisoner behavior. The wish meant more than just an academic exchange. It was a strategic infiltration. Human researchers, scientists, diplomats would now have sanctioned access to the most secretive parts of Xyrillian society. They would learn. They would adapt. Queen Hana realized, with a strange mix of admiration and fear, that she had been outmaneuvered, not by force, not by violence, but by a simple, elegant strategy. Her royal code glowed, a neural network of complex biological algorithms that demanded absolute compliance. The wish was spoken. The wish would be honored. Jae-sung allowed himself the smallest of smiles, not a smile of triumph, a smile of understanding. The first step towards changing an entire galactic relationship had just been taken, not with a weapon, not with a battle strategy, but with a single, carefully chosen wish. The interrogation room's energy fields continued to pulse. Space stretched endlessly outside, filled with millions of star systems. But here, in this moment, something extraordinary was happening. A human and a Xyrillian queen. A wish. And the potential for a completely new kind of interaction. The universe watched, silently, waiting. 6 months after Jae-sung's calculated wish, the first human research teams arrived on the Xyrillian Central World. Dr. Yoon Ki-woo, a quiet biochemist, with sharp eyes, led the initial delegation. The Xyrillian cities were nothing like human expectations, massive biomechanical structures that breathed and moved, constantly shifting and adapting. Transparent walkways connected living buildings. Energy networks pulsed like blood vessels through the entire planetary infrastructure. Humans brought something the Xyrillians never anticipated: curiosity without conquest. Dr. Soo-jin Lee, the lead diplomatic coordinator, understood the delicate balance. Every interaction was a dance of cultural understanding. She watched how Xyrillian workers responded to human researchers, initial suspicion slowly transforming into genuine interest. Xyrillian manufacturing systems fascinated human engineers. Biological computers that could regenerate themselves, machinery that healed and adapted. Humans shared their digital network technologies. Xyrillians shared their organic computational methods. The exchange wasn't just technological, it was deeply cultural. Young Xyrillian scholars started requesting human literature. They were intrigued by human concepts of individual freedom, personal creativity, and complex emotional experiences. Humans, in turn, learned about Xyrillian collective consciousness and their intricate social networks. Queen Hana monitored everything. Her initial reluctance slowly transformed into cautious curiosity. The human approach was different. They didn't seek to dominate. They sought to understand. Dr. Kai Wu discovered something remarkable in Xyrillian biochemical systems, a potential treatment for genetic disorders that could revolutionize medical science. In exchange, human quantum computing models offered the Xyrillians unprecedented computational capabilities. The first joint research stations were established. Humans and Xyrillians worked side by side. Communication barriers slowly dissolved. Translation systems improved. Understanding deepened. Diplomatic channels that were once hostile communication networks now became platforms of genuine exchange. Military strategists on both sides watched with a mix of confusion and emerging respect. Jae-sung's wish was working in ways nobody had predicted. Xyrillian social structures began experiencing internal transformations. Individual Xyrillians started questioning their traditional hierarchical systems. The concept of individual choice, so fundamental to human culture, started creating fascinating ripple effects. Some conservative Xyrillian leaders resisted. They saw the cultural exchange as a potential threat, but younger generations embraced the new possibilities. They saw potential where older generations saw danger. Dr. Soo-jin Lee understood the complexity. This wasn't just a diplomatic mission. This was a carefully orchestrated cultural intervention. Each interaction was a gentle probe, each shared. Technology a bridge between two completely different civilizations. The research stations became more than scientific facilities. They became meeting grounds, places where two species could genuinely communicate, learn, and grow together. Quantum entanglement research, biological regeneration studies, computational neural network designs. The collaborations produced breakthrough. After breakthrough, Queen Hana watched her civilization transform. What started as a forced diplomatic exchange was becoming something more. A genuine partnership was emerging. Jae-sung, still somewhat of a mystery, continued to advise from the background. His strategic vision was proving incredibly accurate. Diplomatic reversal wasn't about winning. It was about creating mutual understanding. Human empathy met Xyrillian collective intelligence. The results were extraordinary. Distant star systems watched. Galactic communication networks buzzed with news of this unprecedented relationship. Other species started paying attention. One wish, one moment of strategic thinking, and an entire galactic relationship was being rewritten. The universe continued its silent, patient observation, waiting to see what would happen next. The first signs of transformation appeared quietly, like tiny cracks in an ancient system, barely noticeable at first. Xyrillian communication networks began showing unusual patterns. Individual voices started emerging where collective thoughts once dominated. Young Xyrillians began asking questions that were previously unthinkable. Queen Hana realized something fundamental was changing. The cultural exchange wasn't just transferring information. It was causing a complete psychological restructuring of Xyrillian society. Human concepts of individual freedom were spreading like a subtle virus through Xyrillian social systems. Personal choice, individual creativity. These were dangerous ideas. In a civilization built on strict collective thinking, Dr. Yoon Ki-woo noticed it first during a routine research meeting. A junior Xyrillian researcher interrupted a senior official. Something unheard of in their traditional hierarchy. The researcher questioned a long-standing scientific assumption, presenting alternative perspectives learned from human colleagues. The room went silent. Jae-sung, monitoring from a distant communication hub, understood the significance. This was more than an academic discussion. This was a revolution happening through intellectual discourse. Xyrillian government systems started experiencing internal stress. Departments that were once perfectly synchronized now showed signs of individual thinking. Debates emerged. Discussions became complex. The smooth machine-like efficiency was developing human-like unpredictability. Some conservative Xyrillian leaders panicked. They saw this as a potential threat to their entire civilization's structure. Emergency meetings were called. Discussions became heated, but the younger generation was different. They saw possibilities where older generations saw danger. Research stations became crucibles of transformation. Human scientists didn't just share technology, they shared ways of thinking, questioning, exploring, challenging established norms. A Xyrillian biochemist developed a breakthrough medical technique by combining human creativity with Xyrillian biological understanding. Another created a new computational model that merged human algorithmic thinking with Xyrillian organic processing. Queen Hana's intelligence networks tracked everything. Her initial forced diplomatic agreement was producing results far beyond mathematical predictions. Diplomatic channels buzzed with unprecedented activity. Other galactic civilizations watched with a mixture of curiosity and concern. No one had seen such a rapid, peaceful transformation between two previously hostile species. Jae-sung's original wish was proving to be a masterpiece of strategic thinking, not a conquest, not a defeat, but a complete reimagining of interspecies relationships. The Xyrillian military began experiencing its own internal changes. Young officers started questioning traditional combat strategies. They studied human historical conflicts, understanding that victory wasn't always about overwhelming force. Human technological adaptability met Xyrillian collective intelligence. The results were extraordinary. Quantum research facilities became melting pots of innovation. Biological computing labs produced technologies that seemed like science fiction. Communication networks expanded, connecting minds across vast galactic distances. Queen Hana understood the true power of Jae-sung's wish. It wasn't just an exchange program. It was a complete systemic transformation. Individual Xyrillians started expressing personal emotions, something completely unprecedented in their previous societal structure. They wrote personal journals, they created art, they developed individual identities. The transformation wasn't comfortable, it wasn't smooth, but it was happening. Distant star systems watched, galactic communication networks hummed with discussions about this extraordinary diplomatic experiment. Jae-sung's calculated strategy was working perfectly, not through force, not through conflict, but through the simple, powerful mechanism of mutual understanding. The universe continued its patient observation, waiting to see what would emerge from this delicate, complex dance between two completely different civilizations. Something new was being born, something nobody could have predicted, and it all started with a single wish in a cold, sterile interrogation room. 2 years after the initial cultural exchange, the Xyrillian Empire looked nothing like its previous self. The rigid collective structure had transformed into a complex, dynamic society that valued individual contribution and collective harmony. Queen Hana stood in her central chamber, her biomechanical body displaying colors that represented complex, emotional states, something unimaginable just months earlier. The royal systems that once controlled every aspect of Xyrillian life now functioned more like collaborative networks. Jae-sung watched from a distant communication hub. His strategic vision had worked beyond anyone's expectations. The first joint galactic conference was about to begin. Representatives from multiple star systems would gather to understand how two previously hostile civilizations had achieved what seemed impossible. Human researchers like Dr. Yoon Ki-woo and Dr. Soo-jin Lee had become more than diplomats. They were bridge builders, creating connections that went beyond simple technological exchange. Xyrillian young ones now studied human literature, art, and philosophical concepts. They learned about individual freedom, personal creativity, and the power of diverse thinking. Human researchers, in turn, had learned the beauty of collective intelligence and biological computational systems. The transformation wasn't just political, It was deeply cultural. Technological breakthroughs emerged from unexpected collaborations, quantum computing systems that merged human algorithmic thinking with Xyrillian organic processing, medical treatments that combined human genetic research with Xyrillian regenerative biology. Queen Hana reflected on the journey. What began as a forced diplomatic agreement had become a genuine partnership. The royal wish that Jae-sung had requested was now a living, breathing reality. Galactic communication networks buzzed with excitement. Other civilizations watched in amazement. No one had seen such a rapid, peaceful transformation between two species. The Xyrillian military had completely restructured. Young officers now studied human conflict resolution strategies. They understood that true strength wasn't about overwhelming force, but about understanding and adaptation. Individual Xyrillians were writing personal journals, creating art, expressing emotions. They were developing identities that were both unique and part of a larger collective understanding. Jae-sung's original strategy had worked perfectly, not through conquest, not through violence, but through the simple, powerful mechanism of mutual understanding. The conference hall prepared for the most significant diplomatic meeting in galactic history. Representatives from multiple star systems would witness something unprecedented, a complete reimagining of interspecies relationships. Dr. Soo-jin Lee prepared her presentation. She would explain how a single wish in an interrogation room had changed everything, how understanding was more powerful than any weapon. Queen Hana's communication systems displayed a complex array of emotions: pride, curiosity, a sense of transformation that went beyond simple political changes. The Xyrillian Empire was no longer an empire in the traditional sense. It had become a dynamic, adaptive civilization that valued individual contribution while maintaining a strong collective identity. Distant star systems watched. Communication networks hummed with anticipation. Jae-sung allowed himself a small smile, not a smile of triumph, a smile of understanding. The universe continued its patient observation, waiting to see what would emerge from this delicate, complex dance between two completely different civilizations. Something new was being born, something nobody could have predicted. And it all started with a single wish spoken in a cold, sterile interrogation room. The transformation was complete. But the journey was just beginning, and everything was about to change.